Notice the last person talking is Michael. I'm just saying. It was January 21st, 2021, and I had the amazing honor of speaking for President Biden's inaugural prayer service. I spoke to the president, the vice president, their families, leaders of Congress. It was an unbelievable honor. But exactly 4 years later to the day, I was sitting at my desk at home reading a presidential executive order that had been written the day before that said, I, as a transgender person, do not exist. What a difference 4 years can make. So last month, I was on Colorado Matters, on Colorado Public Radio with Ryan Warren. We were talking about this for an hour. And in the process of that hour, I said that last November, I had renewed my passport and was glad I had done so because it has the appropriate gender on it, which I'll have for at least 10 years. But, a few days later, I thought, should I have done that? Because there could have been people out there listening to it who actually have the power to rescind my current passport, to issue a new one that has the wrong gender on it. If you haven't noticed, it's not a real good time to be transgender in America, or to be an immigrant, or to be anybody who has benefited from diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And the truth is, there's nothing new about that. Because our species has always been creating enemies. E.O. Wilson talked about it. I've talked about that here before. Wilson was a sociobiologist who won 2 Pulitzer Prizes. His first was in identifying that the key social unit for the species was not the nuclear family. The key social unit for our species was the tribe. We didn't take off as a species until we developed tribes. That's when civilizations developed. What brought us together as tribes? Interestingly, it was man's search for meaning. If you want to think about what brought us together as tribes, think of Stonehenge or the carved bodies of Rapa Nui or the burial mounds of indigenous Americans. So his second Pulitzer Prize was in identifying the 9 tribal species. Now, all 9 of these species have a tribal gene. They will sacrifice themselves for the sake of the tribe. And 8 of them have evolved exactly as you would expect. An enemy comes into the camp, the tribe unites, defeats the enemy, some members of the tribe die, but the tribe survives and life goes on. He said, unfortunately, the 9th tribal species has evolved to believe an enemy is essential for the tribe to survive. And if no natural enemy exists, they create one. He said, we don't get a hold of this. We lose the species and we lose the planet as we know it. We've always been creating enemies that don't exist. Right now in America, it just happens to be transgender people, immigrants, and anybody who benefited from diversity, equity, or inclusion initiatives. There's always a different group at different times in different places in the world, and so it was in the 1st century. The Roman Empire controlled practically the entire known world, including the little tiny out-of-the-way insignificant state of Israel that they called Palestine. But those who were leaders in Israel had lost almost all of their power, and desperate to hang on to whatever power they could hang on to, they went to Rome and said, we as the religious leaders of Israel are the only ones who can identify who the real threats are to your power within our nation. And so you need to leave us in power because we're the only ones who can spot your true enemies. That's been happening since the beginning of time. But now they had to spot enemies. And so what enemy did they present to Rome? This itinerant, out-of-the-way preacher who didn't even have his own apartment, slept in the spare rooms of friends, had a bunch of ragtag followers, but they said, this Rome is your enemy. And Jesus was crucified. So really, it's kind of simple. Jesus was crucified for political expediency. It was that simple. The religious leaders of Israel were focused on the level of humanity working as ego. When we're working at the level of ego, that is in fact the least mature, most basic way in which humans function. It is humans at our worst. When we work at the level of ego, we are interested in exactly what the ego is interested in. The ego is interested in 2 things: personal power and personal safety. If the ego has a modicum of power and a sense of safety, it doesn't really care what happens to anybody else. The ego is satisfied. It is a tyrant for just those two things, power and safety. And so when we work at the level of ego, we're working at the least mature level that a human can work at. We're interested just in those two things, power and safety. Now, beneath the ego lies what Carl Jung called the self. And every religion since the beginning of time has called the soul. The ego is here for power and retirement benefits. The soul is here for the ride. The soul is here for the experience. It is the soul that is capable of altruism. It is the soul that is capable of love. It's the soul that's capable of overcoming our need for personal power and safety to meet the needs of others. But it's difficult for us to get to the level of soul. What is it that enables us to get to the level of soul? It takes three things early in life for us to be able to have enough ego strength to move to the level of soul. We talk about people with a big ego. Actually, what we mean is they have great egos, need no ego strength. So a big ego is somebody who has zero ego strength, a lot of ego needs power and safety. But if you have received adequate ego strength, well, then you can live beneath the level of ego at the level of soul. What is it that allows you to do that? Three things you need. You need parents who could delay their own gratification to meet your needs. You need people who provided safety to you very early in life. And then the third and the most important of the three is you need to receive a sense of your own self-worth, of your own identity. You need people who actually see you. People who love you, not because you're obedient to them, not because of what you can do for them, not because of what you accomplish or how you behave, but people who love you just because you exist. If you have that, then you can get beneath the ego to work from the level of soul. All of us are neurobiologically hardwired for deep human connection. And yet pretty much all of us believe there's something about us that makes us unworthy of deep human connection. And the degree to which we are able to ameliorate that and have a belief in ourselves, that is what enables us to get to beneath the level of ego. Unfortunately, those in power are often those who are living at the level of ego because they want power and personal safety. And so it was. But there were those within the Jewish council who in fact were people working from the level of soul. It's just they were powerless to do anything about it. They were as powerless as Democrats are in Washington right now. And that's the passage we're looking at today. It's the 23rd chapter of the Gospel of Luke, beginning with the 50th verse. 23rd chapter of Luke, beginning with verse 50. Now there was a man named Joseph, a member of the council, a good, an upright man who had not consented to their decision and action, a man working at the level of soul. He came from the Judean town of Arimathea, and he was waiting for the kingdom of God. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body. Then he took it down, wrapped it in linen cloth, and placed it in a tomb put in the rock, one in which no one had yet been laid. It was preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. The women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandment. The women stayed close to Jesus. They stayed close to his body. They went to see where it was laid because the women knew they needed to grieve the death of their Lord. All of us, when we lose something or someone we love, must grieve. Grief is what happens internally when you lose someone you love. Mourning is the public expression of that grief. And here's the deal. Women, on the whole, in most cultures throughout time, have been able to grieve more effectively than men. That is because women, on the whole, see grief as an experience to be integrated into their lives. They see grief as a part of life. They see mourning as a part of life. Men tend to see grief as a problem to be solved. That's why you see none of the male disciples there after the death of Jesus, because they're off trying to solve the problem of their grief. While the women are sitting in the grief, preparing to mourn, waiting for the Sabbath to be over so they can go and bring spices to the body, the Jewish people have always known how to grieve. They sit Shiva for 7 days when a family member has died, staying in the house and grieving together, mourning together. There's a 365-day grief period for the Jewish people. One of my favorite poems about grief is from a 20th century Jewish rabbi, Chaim Stern. "'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch. 'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, to hope, to dream, to be, and to lose. A thing for fools, this, and a holy thing. For your life was lived in me. Your laughter lifted me. Your word was gift to me. To remember this brings painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, and a holy thing to love what death can touch." That is someone who knows how to grieve and mourn. And the women knew how to grieve and mourn because Jesus had taught them how to grieve and mourn. It was the 11th chapter of the Gospel of John. Jesus had just received word that Lazarus, his best friend, was sick and about to die. He waits a couple of days, and then he tells the disciples, "We're going into Judea." Their response? "Have you forgotten, Jesus? They kind of want to kill you in Judea?" And he said, "Well, we have to go because Lazarus is asleep." But the disciples never did do all that well with metaphors, so they said, "If he's asleep, don't you think he'll wake up on his own?" Jesus said, "Lazarus is dead." "Oh, and we're going into Judea." And they went into Judea, and who met them at the edge of the territory? Yeah, it was the sister of Lazarus, Martha, and she was livid, furious. "If you had been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus said, "Well, your brother will be resurrected." Well, she said, "I know he's going to be resurrected at the last day. That doesn't help much now." And so Jesus went on into town and went close to the house, and there the other sister was, the one who wore her heart on her sleeve. Mary came to Jesus, fell at his feet, and sobbed. And all the friends of Lazarus sobbed, and all the family members sobbed, and Jesus wept. Because Jesus knew you must grieve that which must end before you can begin to celebrate that which is going to begin. You have to grieve that which must end. He knew an entire era was coming to an end. His relationship with Lazarus would be changed forever after he raised him from the dead. His relationship with Mary and Martha changed forever. With all of his followers, changed forever. Those who wanted him dead would want him dead even more. It was the end of a certain age of innocence. And so Jesus weeps because we must grieve the end of something before we can begin something new. So I'm a therapist. My doctorate is in pastoral counseling. And all the time I have people come to me, and they know that it's time for a part of their lives to end. That's often why they've come to me, is because they know it's time for a part of their lives to end, but they're not willing to do what is necessary, which is to let go of that part of their lives. Because our egos demand that we hold on to that which must go until we're able to grab on to that which is coming. No time in between where we have nothing to grab onto. Unfortunately, it's not how life works. Often it's people who know it's time for a relationship to end. Or sometimes it's people who know it's time to leave a job or even leave a career. Often it's people who know that they've not been true to their own soul, and it's time to answer that call that they are terrified to answer. But it's my job to help them understand that they must let go of the thing that must be grieved the thing that must die before they are going to be free to take on that which is yet to come. One of my favorite old myths is the English story of Beowulf. 6th century Beowulf has saved the king of Hrothgar by killing the horrible monster Grendel, but then it turns out that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was the mother of Grendel. And the very next night, the mother of Grendel kills the king's most trusted advisor, and Beowulf knows he has failed the king. And he is filled with grief because he has failed. You know, historically in the Western world, we have always been a guilt-based culture. Now, what that means is, in a guilt-based culture, there's nothing worse than not obeying your own conscience. Nothing worse than disobeying your own conscience in a guilt-based culture. Unfortunately, if you haven't noticed over the last 15 years or so, in America particularly, in positions of power, we have shifted from a guilt-based culture to a shame-based culture. In a shame-based culture, the worst thing that can happen is to lose face, is to be seen as not powerful before others. But Beowulf is filled with guilt, and so he goes down where he knows he must fight the mother of Grendel. You know, this is pretty much always true. Your real problem in life is not the thing you fear, it's that which gave birth to the thing you fear. But that's a different issue for a different sermon. We'll talk about that sometime. That'll get you thinking, what gave birth to the thing you fear? So he goes and knows he must battle the mother of Grendel. And he gives his will to the king because he's thinking he's not going to live. And the king gives him a sword and a helmet, and he drops down into the water and then goes into her lair, and he fights her for 3 days and 3 nights, and he refuses to give up the sword and the helmet. He's hanging on to them until finally he realizes he's not going to defeat her when he's hanging on to the sword and the helmet. And he lets go of them. And only now does he have eyes to see there is a glowing sword attached to a chain, attached to a wall, and he rips that sword from the wall and slays her with it. He's not able to see the tool he needs to slay the mother of Grendel until he has let go of the tools that are no longer helpful to him. All of us must let go before the new thing comes. We must spend time lost, but as I've said many a time, it's all right because lost is a place too. It is necessary to spend that time grieving and mourning in the place called lost. Jesus is there and he's mourning and he's grieving the death of Lazarus. And now they go to the tomb. And Jesus says, take the stone away from the tomb. And Martha, still feeling pretty snarky, says, yeah, he's been dead for 4 days. It is not going to smell good. They move the stone away. Jesus says, Lazarus, come forth. And out he comes stumbling. Stumbling because, you know, when you're wrapping people in grave clothes, you're not thinking about him walking again. He can barely move. He can't breathe. His entire head is covered. He comes stumbling out. He's going to suffocate if somebody doesn't help him. Jesus says, hey, take off the grave clothes, because here's the thing, it's also hard giving birth to something new. It is hard letting go of that which needs to be let go of, and it's also hard being born into that which is just beginning. So it was the spring of 2010. I was watching my favorite television show of all time, Lost. Most people say it's one of the 10 or 20 best television shows ever. There comes a time in the final season when the protagonist of the show, Jack, realizes he's been called by the God figure to die. If you were a Lost fan and you can think back 15 years, it's when Jack goes to the lighthouse and sees in a broken mirror his childhood home. And when I saw that, I started crying. And then not just crying, but sobbing. And I slid down to the floor and just wept and wept. I fell asleep around 1 a.m. maybe. And then I woke up at 4:30 and cried again till dawn. Because I knew I had been called to die. I had a very comfortable life, a national leader in my denomination, the editor-at-large of our national magazine. I It was in a television program that was aired in 70 different markets. I had a lot of power. But it was time to let it go. Because I knew it was time for one thing to die and another thing to be born. And I sobbed until dawn. Because it's never easy to let go of what you need to let go of. It was 3 years before I actually transitioned genders, because you cannot hurry these things. With all of my clients, I may recognize what it is they need to let go of, but I also know they will not be able to let go of it until they can have the ego strength that allows them to live at the level of soul. And it takes a long time. It took me 3 years. But when I finally gave up the life I had, I lost everything. I lost all of my jobs. I'd never had a bad review. I lost every single job. I lost my pension, worth well over $1 million. I think about that regularly nowadays. I had loaned the organization I worked with $500,000 of my own money. They refused to give that back. I had to hire a law firm here in Denver to threaten a lawsuit to get that back. And fortunately, I got 80% of it back. Fortunately, because over my first 4 years as Paula, I earned a total of $23,000, less than $6,000 a year. If I hadn't gotten that back, I'd have been in big trouble. Since that time, well, things have gone pretty well. I did a TED Talk and another TED Talk and another TED Talk, and they've had 10 million views. And then suddenly I'm speaking all over the world on issues of gender equity. And then I had a best-selling book, and now I've signed a life rights deal. And the Hollywood production company wants to do a 3-season, 30-show story of my life. It's all wonderful. I did not know that at the time. I just knew I was letting go of a very comfortable life to move into a very uncertain life to which I knew I had been called. David Whyte is my favorite poet. I shared one of his poems with you about 1.5 years ago. Whyte was very comfortably working for the Boeing Corporation, had a beautiful house on the water outside of Seattle, had everything he needed, but he knew it was time to let go and grieve what needed to die. And yet he was comfortable and he loved his job and he was doing good at his job, but he knew it was time to go. And when he was in the midst of that struggle of deciding, do I stay, do I go? This poem popped into his mind, just out of nowhere. He's sitting at his desk looking out over the water and the words just came to him. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. It's time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own. There you can be sure you are not beyond love. The dark, it will be your home tonight. The night will give you a horizon further than you can see. As the words came pouring out, the next phrase surprised him, because the next phrase of the poem was, you must learn one thing. And he thought, finally, I've been struggling over letting go and moving out. You must learn, this is great. And then he realized he did not have a clue what the one thing was. It took him a very long time and a lot of struggle to figure out what the one thing was. Then he needed to resign from his very comfortable position and go out and make his living as a poet. Good luck with that. Now, if you know anything about David Whyte, it's worked out extremely well for him. But when he finally came to know and was ready to let go, well, then the rest of the poem came to him. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. You must give up all other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn that anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. One more time, that second half of the poem. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. You must give up all other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn that anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. And now the whole poem. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. It's time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own. There you can be sure you are not beyond love. The dark will be your home tonight. The night will give you a horizon further than you can see. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. You must give up all the other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn that anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Will you pray with me? Oh God, how we want to hang on to Saturday. We just want to hang on to Saturday. At least it's something. At least it's something. We can grieve and we can remember and we can live in the past and we can have some sense of safety. We just want to hang on. But God, we know you're calling us to let go, because if we don't let go, Sunday can't come. Give us the courage, God, to let go of what we need to let go of. And give us the hope to know that Sunday's coming.
This is the beginning of Holy Week, a week that the church has observed for thousands of years, recognizing that this is the Sunday that Jesus came into Jerusalem on a donkey, a symbol of peace, not a symbol of war, and definitely not the symbol that people expected a warrior king to ride on. But somehow we've missed that message continually. We just want to get to Easter so we can celebrate the resurrection. But as Paula has taught us this morning, there's no resurrection without a death. And this is the soberness that comes with this week, the sobriety that we're invited into, especially on Friday when we remember the death of Jesus. And each Sunday here at DCC, we celebrate, we remember that death through Eucharist, Christ's body broken for you, Christ's blood shed for you. And it was St. Augustine who was the first one to comment that this is a mystery, this meal, because we are eating who we are as the body of Christ. That it's not just something we remember, it's something we participate in. In some ways, it's its own commitment that we too will be those who die with Jesus, which was his continual invitation to those who wanted to follow him. And because this invitation from Jesus was open to anyone, and because it's his table and his meal here at Denver Community Church, we invite anyone who wants to come to participate in this meal, to be those who not only receive the body and the blood, but be those who agree, to be those who, like Jesus, will be broken open and poured out for this world. And so if you're here this morning and you wish to participate, we invite you to do just that. We'll have 2 stations up here in the front, and we ask that if you wish to come there, that you'd come down the center aisle. We have 2 on the sides. You can walk down the side aisles and then return to your seat using the diagonal aisles. As you come, we ask that you would take the piece of bread and dip it in either the larger cup, which is wine, or the shorter cup, which is juice. As you hear the words, the body of Christ broken for you and the blood of Christ shed for you, spoken over you. And as you prepare to come, may you hear these words of liturgy. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body." Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." You may come as you're ready.